floor. And joining us now are two senators. Senator Beth, thank you for being with us. Beth represents the 5th Senate District, which includes the towns of Bloomfield, Burlington, Farmington, West Hartford, and you're the Senate Chair of the Appropriations Committee, so very important committee. It's very good to have you here. And Republican Senator Kevin Witkos, very nice to have you here. This is your 4th term in the state Senate. You're also the Minority Leader pro tem, so very nice to have you here, too.
Great to be here.
Let me start by asking you, Senator what's your takeaway from today's proposal? There were obviously the gigantic part of it would appear to be the transportation part.
Yes.
What do you walk away with?
Well, I take away from it that there are a lot of difficult choices. When you have to cut $570 million, I think that's what the Appropriations Committee is going to be hearing about. I think the transportation is obviously a focus, and certainly for me, the focus is on equity and funding of education. So I think there were some increases for magnets and charters while ECS was flat, so that's something I'll be watching to try to make that more equitable for our cities and towns.
And as some of the educators we had on earlier today said, you keep it flat, and they're grateful for that it wasn't cut, but they said, your costs go up, so flat doesn't really mean even.
Right, and we're increasing other line items. Over the past decade, we've increased funding for magnet schools 1,600%, while public schools are at 60%. Charters, 1,400%, public schools, 60%. So I think we've just got to, it's a lot to bite off with education cost sharing, but I think it hurts our communities, and certainly my community is disproportionately affected as we've had increasing poverty in them, and so we'll be looking at that.
Senator Witkos, what's your takeaway from all of this today?
Well, I think the governor outlined 4 different focus areas that he wanted to rely on. ECS flat funding, as you said, municipal aid flat funding, which directly goes back to property tax increases in our communities. I was very glad to hear that our communities will be made whole in that respect. Additionally, he talked about his sales tax reduction, which I would say it would probably be an increase, because if we kept the provisions that are in our law today carried forward, we would actually have a cut in taxes. I.e. the clothing allowance for under $50.
Which was supposed to go into effect July 1st.
July 1st, right. And by eliminating that now we're going to be paying tax on our clothing under $50. And the last part I had some concern about was the governor had mentioned a $590 million cut in current services budget, but we have a $1.3 billion budget deficit facing us, so that means $700 million in tax increases, which we didn't hear a whisper about during today's speech.
I'd like to go with another topic now, and I'll let you start, Senator Witkos. What about the concept that the governor has called his second chance society?
Sure, I think it's a good way to start moving down the path of the folks that really have done nonviolent. We have to be very clear to make sure that they are nonviolent offenders, to give them the opportunity to get a job, be a productive member of society. Incarceration, we have some of the highest incarceration rates in our country for nonviolent offenses. I think we can move in that direction. Currently, we have the technology where we could provide electronic tracking of our offenders. There's only 700 people in the state of Connecticut that are on that. I think we should be able to have expanded use of that. I think that's a great way to control some of the prison population on the outside, and having them have the ability to work and pay for their own rehab as well. So I applaud the governor's efforts in that respect.
Senator Bai?
I think this governor's been a transformative leader on criminal justice and policing. Our crime is way down. We have fewer people in prison. And now he's saying, let's take it another step. And I think we've also done incredible things with our juvenile justice system, where lives had been ruined before for what are now going to be misdemeanor offenses. So I think Senator Witkos talked about the idea of nonviolent offenders. We've been locking them up for a generation, and I think I give the governor so much credit for his leadership on this issue.
Is this eventually going to lead to, or maybe not eventually, maybe more sooner rather than later, the closing of one of our correctional facilities?
Yes, I think sooner rather than later. And then what you need to do, though, is make sure some of those dollars go into the community for support. So
yeah, the governor outlined in his budget proposal, he's anticipating a $24 million savings for the closure of one prison, and part of that money cannot go back to the general fund. I think it needs to go back to programs to reduce the recidivism rate, which are the people that have gotten out of jail and end up going back to jail, because otherwise it's just a vicious cycle that just keeps going on and on and on.
Let me ask you about one thing that came up that I had not expected to hear, and that was all-day kindergarten, that by 2017 every child should be able to have all-day kindergarten. Senator Bai?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea, and I think the way the governor's going about it by adding the dollars to the capital budget is fair, because you don't want to sort of reward towns that have dragged their feet and dragged their feet. Operationally, they'll need to figure it out within the confines of their budget, but we're going to help them with some of the capital expenses that are very real when you move to full-day kindergarten.
And I think that'll be an issue that each local Board of Education will have to deal with. If they haven't adopted full-day kindergarten now, there are specific reasons why, whether it's space needs, they don't have the ability to have a number of classrooms available. And I'd have to see the language as it comes out, because we don't fund all of our obligations now at the state level as far as education goes. Special education is one of the biggest things that we need to do. So, once again, we're creating new programs and new initiatives, but we're not funding our current obligations. So that concerns me.
Let me just take 30 seconds for both of you to talk about special ed, because both the educators that we interviewed today as well as the municipalities that we interviewed today said they need relief on special education. They need the state to pick up more or all of the cost. What do you think, Senator Biden?
Well, I think we need to take a serious look at it and listen to our communities, both on special ed and education cost sharings. We do put a big burden on the communities, and sometimes when communities do it well, they suffer because then families move there, and then that accelerates the cost. So I think we need a tiered reimbursement system, but hopefully through the public hearings we'll get some good ideas.
And I also believe there's an idea of creating some regionalism with the cost of special education and providing treatment. If there's a certain type of a classroom that's being offered in one community, maybe that can be copied. Some other community can send their students over to adopt, get a 2-for-1 special, if you will.
So there could be some savings there. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us. I know it's going to be a very interesting session. Senator Kevin Witkos and Senator Beth Bye, thank you so much. As we said earlier,
Diane.
This is just the beginning of the budget process, so now the hard work really begins.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
Bye-bye.
I want to say that both